The season's been interesting. This is going to be the first season in about 3+ years that I've teamed with a different team.
The Walshy decision really was like a long time coming. Like things were just getting worse for over a year.
I was told it was personal and, performance issues.
And there it is, Instinct making a statement here in the losers bracket finals, taking game one from Final Boss.
All right, performance issues. And if I was like, oh, my teammates don't think I'm holding my weight, I would change their mind in a heartbeat. If it was like personal stuff, I don't see what was going on that was so bad that couldn't be worked through. I felt like I was kind of left out to dry.
Replacing Walsh on Final Boss was extremely hard on me. I look up to him like so much. The Ogres and Walshy are legends.
The run that we had will be unparalleled through probably like the history of like MLG.
What was it like beating the team that gave you the boot a few weeks ago?
It was like taking candy from a baby.
Oh!
Wait, whoa, let me finish. But I think the baby would put up a better fight.
You were dropped by Final Boss. Put yourself back in that timeline. How did that decision ultimately come about to drop one of the best players in the game?
Any long relationship you have is going to, have different hurdles, and weren't able to figure out some of that stuff. And so looking back, we had such an incredible dynasty in the careers, and then, had some butting of heads. But I guess that's what GOATs do, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tied the Leader. Makowski, joined alongside me is my duo all the way back from 2004, Eli the Ninja, who joins me in every one of these episodes. Our guest today transcends all talking points and superlatives when it comes to esports and competitive gaming. He was the first sponsored Halo Pro, the winner of 23 MLG tournaments, including a remarkable 9 in a row where he formed that dynasty in Halo 2. He's not only shared the main stage with the GOATs, but he might just be the GOAT himself. David Walshy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. I've been, bugging you guys for months to get on here. You guys keep dodging all my messages.
Yeah.
I've been calling, texting, calling house numbers, calling parents, seeing others, and finally got on here. So I appreciate it. 2025 is starting off strong.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We are so excited. Funny enough, when we first started conceptualizing this podcast, which was 2 years ago, me, Eli, and Killsinthenight, our producer, we actually remember I came up to you at the Worlds season 2, and I said, Dave, we're going to do this podcast. We'd love to have you on. And you famously said, hey, man, make it a thing, get a couple guests on, and I promise you I will eventually come on the show. So it just goes to show good things take a little bit of time. And going back to that conception, our first ever graphic when we were just trying to come up with the branding for Tied the Leader had a nice little picture of you on it. So maybe we'll flash that up in the post-production with Dave's beautiful smiling face. But with every show, we like to kick off with the origin story. But let's talk a little bit before Halo. What were some of your earliest memories from gaming, and how'd you get into it?
Ooh, man. Let's see. How long of a story you want to go here? How old are we going back?
I mean, 3-4 years old. That's when I started. I figure you were probably about the same.
The earliest I can remember of playing games was playing like Nintendo or Atari, mainly like Nintendo. And I would just always play games like Contra or Bubble Bobble and just like random simple Nintendo games like that. But then my parents would be like, you can't play till like 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning. And so like as soon as I'd wake up like 6 or 7 a.m. I'd just like sneak down in the basement, turn on the TV as low as it could be, and then like play the game for a few hours. And then I'd go up and be like, hey, it's like 10 or 11. Can I play games now? And they're like, yeah, you can go play now. And then I'd go play for another 3 or 4 hours. So yeah, I was always obsessed with games.
Can you remember your first shooting game or competitive title? Would it have been GoldenEye by chance?
Actually, I played like a little bit of Counter-Strike 1.3, and I went to like one LAN for that way back in the day, or like one LAN or one tournament for that. I was good, but like nowhere near like top CS pro level. I played a little like Warcraft 3, Counter-Strike, started like once games had like online access and you could play some of those on PC, that's where like started to get a little interested in like climbing ladders and playing. And then when I started playing Halo, I was just really hooked on that game. I loved like the the competitive aspect of it. I love the social aspect of it, and just kind of rode that wave.
You know you're an OG when it's not 1.6. It's one of the earliers or 1.3, like Dave said. So I know a lot of people's first competitive foray would have been 1.6, but just goes to show how long the man David Walshy has been doing this. Speaking of dating back, when we first met, you were playing under the moniker Hot Sheet. What inspired that gamer tag, and how did you ultimately decide to make the switch to Walshy, which is your last name with the Y on it?
I started off as Walshy.
Oh, wow.
And then when I tried to make a tag on Xbox Live, Walshy was taken, because I mean, it's just pretty similar last name or like nickname people would have if they had the last name Walsh. I don't know what I was doing. I was like 19 years old. But yeah, I think I just used that as a nickname here or there. But yeah, I was always like, people always knew me as Walshy, or always went as Walshy. And then like, I think I played like online in a few tournaments under like the Hachi name. I did remember when Halo 2 first came out, there was part of me that was like, wanted to just like start from scratch and see if I could climb the ladder again and be like, all right, I'm just going to go in as some brand new tag. Nobody's going to know me, do whatever. And like, I really wanted to do that. But then I also realized like, man, I already made like so many friends. Like, of course I want to like play with all my friends and, you know, climb with some of the teammates I've already made. So I initially scratched the idea, but yeah, that's, I guess, a long-winded answer of why I went between Walshy and Hachi and what I wanted to do when Halo 2 first came out.
And I guess Walshy became available once you started adding those clan tags like SDK and 3D in front of it. Nobody had that taken. Unless you were an imposter and you had the I or L 3D L and you tried to make it look like you were Walshy. I know Eli knows a little something about that.
We'll talk about that, yeah, at some point.
Eli has lost hundreds of dollars to kids offering lessons under those tags. I can tell you that.
No, actually, I mean, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I kind of want to talk about it now. So it was right when you guys signed that deal with 3D. I was playing with this kid, Hamster I. Do you remember this kid, Hamster?
Sounds familiar-ish, yeah.
Very young kid, played on 10 sensitivity, was an absolute demon on the sticks. And he took, like, I think Tom's actual tag was I3DI Ogre 2. But he made I3DL Ogre 2, and like the lowercase L and the capital I looked exactly the same. But the kid was so good that like he was fooling people into thinking he was actually Tom. And I had a fake Pac-Man tag. I had EG Pac-Man, like right when Pac-Man joined Evil Geniuses, is like very beginning of EG. And me and him would search as Pac-Man and Ogre 2. I was probably like 14 years old or something. And we matched with Puckett and Shibby on our team. These were like the first two people from MLG that I even played with, and they thought it was actually us. We like turned our mics off because we knew who they were. They're like, yo, is this your new tag? Yeah, let me add you, bro. And like, that's how I weaseled my way into pro lobbies, was posing as Pac-Man while my friend posed as Ogre 2. But yeah, fun stories back then, man.
At one point in like Halo 3, I started making a couple fake like pro tags. And so like people are like, oh, that's not like the real fear itself. But I would just like be dumpstering on people and like, man, like I remember like playing some former pros. Like I remember even playing like some old teammates at the time. Like I remember like beating Defy or something like that when we were teaming in Halo 3. And he was like, I just lost to a fake fear itself. I'm like, oh man, that's rough for you.
Just like secretly knew about it.
Things aren't looking good for this next time.
Oh man. Our competitive history as a group of three actually dates back to early 2005. It would have been 20 years ago to the day that the three of us first linked up, which, Dave, I can see, I apologize. I just aged us to make us all look like old tortoises, which we are at this point. But I recall Gandhi or Shockwave left the free-for-all lobby, leaving one spot open, and I sent an invite to Eli with a message, all caps, join up now. No questions asked, just join up now. A nanosecond later, he joins up, which began a very fun time period in both of our lives where we got to compete against the best in the game, despite having no name recognition, no accomplishments in MLG just yet. You were always known to give people with no names a chance. What was your thought process behind that?
I don't know. I think...
why did I invite you too?
Not even mention it. Like, why the heck was I playing games with you guys? What the heck was I doing? I think that I was always looking for people who had good vibes, people that were like good online, people that are playing a lot. And yeah, I think I always tried to like curate my friends list or like games like that. When it came to scrim time, we had very specific teams and stuff that we wanted to scrim, and it was a pretty smaller subset of teams that we could like play and get good practice out of. And then when it came to running, custom 8-man free-for-alls or running like 4v4s and stuff, like we're playing games for a living. At that time, we're not like making insane amounts of money or anything. It's like trying to, have the most fun with it and get the most out of it. Halo 2 at that time was the biggest thing. There really wasn't any other like great games that were comparing to that, especially in the console area. And even when I was done with scrim and stuff, I was like, oh, I want to go play like zombies, or I want to just go play free for all, or I'm down, like it wouldn't just be all day 24 hours MLG settings. It would be switching to a few of these other settings and game modes and stuff. And so for me, I always had like a wide range on like my list and my clan tag, or on the clan to just get those games going. And so I think for me, it was just always it was never just about tournament results, who was doing the best there. It was like, oh shit, like I tried to at least recognize skill when I saw it. And so I'd like, if someone was like did something really good to me or against me or made me laugh, and like whether it's like Eli hitting a sick double shot at me and doing something good against me, or Makowski trying to shoot at me and making me laugh. Both of those were great experiences in the game. And I just always, appreciated those sort of things when I was trying to game some Halo 2.
Man, I didn't expect you to just roast him, but it's so easy to roast Makowski, man.
Fatality.
I don't know if you listen to our casting at all, but like I just have to roast this guy constantly when we're casting. So I totally understand. You don't even realize this, but I think you adding me to your friends list and then starting to invite me to lobbies like actually jump-started my career in a way, because like I was started to do well. I was playing against all these people that I looked up to, and I was like even winning some of the lobbies. And it gave me some confidence that I took with me to LAN, and then started getting top 8 on LAN in 2006. I'm trying to think how much longer it probably would have taken me, because like without reps against the very best, it just takes you longer to develop as a player. I don't know. It was one of the first times I ever played with you. This is back in the era where you could only have 100 friends. And then I remember after the game was over, it was like, Walshy sent you a friend request. And I remember just like staring at my TV like, what? Like, I don't know, just kind of like, honestly just blew my mind. I was just like, really? Of course, accepted it. And then I think you were right. I was just on all the time. I was good online. So you're just like, hey, if I ever need somebody to fill an FFA spot, like this kid's a fucking nerd, he'll join for sure. Like,
I think that's always how it went too. Like if I was in a free for all and like I play against people and like, they're winning or doing, at the top, like almost every single time, I'm like, all right, I want to play more against this. And like, I just started to get such like god tier free for all lobbies all the time.
Yeah.
Like it was the same thing when I first played with Strongside. It was like played with him and like never knew who he was, didn't know if he went to any tournaments. First few games, he's just like absolutely destroying. I remember too, like somebody like had said something like, oh, you're so lucky with that connection. And then like the only thing Side said, he was like, just because you got outplayed, don't make an excuse for it. And I was like, oh, this kid's serious. Little did I know he's the biggest jokester, but I added him right after that. But like, I was consistently always playing with like you guys, like Side, Karma, like Shockwave, just like nonstop goated lobbies, and it was just always such good fun practice.
I'm glad that helped you flourish your career, Eli, because it ended mine. I remember I won one time. I won a tour to Walsh, and I ran downstairs, ripped the Xbox headset off. You guys remember the old plastic thing, and I'm the best Halo player in the world. I started freaking out. My parents are like, what is wrong with this kid? I said, I'm going pro. I'm one of the best, and I'm going to do it right now. And they're like, no, you're not. You're going to go apply at Chick-fil-A. You're going to get a summer job that's actually for real. So that kind of set my path in the other direction. But we kept pushing through.
With every show, I always do a deep dive into the wiki to like kind of build some storylines around the early days of your career. And so we're backtracking a little bit on the timeline. So going back to like 2003, 2004 is when you started to make a name for yourself at AGP tournaments, which I forgot was even a thing until I was looking at this. Eventually MLG. You had mostly top 8 finishes with a few wins as well, all of which amounted to about $4,000 in prize money in your first 12 events, which is kind of depressing to look at now. So like, what's it like for you now looking at the level that prize pools in gaming have grown to when you look back on those early days?
clearly would love for it to then bigger back then.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, but like I think there's give and take on both sides of that history. Like when you're part on the early end, for me, if you were like you might be able to someday make a living playing this game, and like with that not being like any sort of viable path in the past, I'm like I'm so hungry for that career, that path. I will do anything and everything, and I'll appreciate every single level of that. And then on the flip side too, there's been a lot of groundwork laid up until this day for a lot of different games, and you start to see different levels of like maybe not the same hunger or maybe levels of entitlement. Not saying like any specific players or anything, but like I think there's some of those areas. So it's kind of been done. It's kind of like some of the path has been laid. It's kind of like, all right, here's how the system works. Here's how you're doing with teams and orgs and getting different salaries and whatever. And so I think clearly the more established is where we want things. Like you don't want to be in this wild west or this infancy the entire time for a game. But I think being at the forefront or kind of like a pioneer throughout some of the early stages of early Halo esports or early North American esports is something really special. So like, yes, if you take one side of it and just look at money side, it's like, yeah, lose on that side for sure compared to today's earnings. But very rarely is like a new sport or a new discipline created like this, and like to kind of see all the good, bad, and ugly of that front row seats for a decade is pretty special.
You're right. There wasn't a lot of money, but there was so much passion. Like Halo really started as a grassroots movement, and then everybody just fell in love. And then the launch of Halo 2, where it's just extremely popular, and then it just gets bigger and bigger as time goes on. And now I think you're right. Like there are a lot of issues with the current system. Like there's greed. A lot of the Bitcoin millionaires or whatever decided they could get rich off this esports thing, so they dive in, and then it's just not quite the same, right? It doesn't feel exactly like it did back in the day, whereas it almost felt like just pure passion. Like we didn't know if we're going to make money or not. Honestly, most of the tournaments that I went to, I probably lost money just in traveling, getting the hotel room, buying the team pass, but like I still wasn't going to miss a single event if it was up to me. So it's just so different these days, man.
Yeah, it's different. And I think, back then we were in a spot too, where it's like, Halo 2 and some of the games were selected because they were kind of the top or the most interesting in some of the cases. And there are many leagues out there now that, the developers see it as such a big part of their ecosystem as having like this league or having an esports title to their name. So, there's a lot of biases in there. Like if we look at, Riot or Blizzard or Microsoft, all these different games or all these publishers, they care more about like, okay, they don't care about what the best game is out there. Like they care about what the best game that they have is, and they want to push that because they realize like the returns they get on that over and over again. And so I think we're not sometimes leading with what is the best game. It's a lot of times there are a lot of business decisions in there with a lot of these developers. And like I said, sometimes there's esports that are artificially propped up and maybe have, more money and things in there than they deserve. And other ones are underserved because sometimes some developers just notoriously don't care about the games as much. Like you look at certain Nintendo titles or like Smash, and like they almost like actively hate on the Melee scene or stop other things from developing. So it's interesting how you have this wide range of successes and failures through some of these developers either supporting or shunning their games.
Let's move things along and talk about one of your fondest first rivals in Halo, who fondly proclaimed, "It's called teamwork, Hachi." Zyos. What made you guys such bitter rivals, and how has the trash talk evolved from then to now, where it seemed to really play a much bigger role in competition back in the day?
I would say me and Zyos kind of went from like rivals to teammates to rivals in a way.
It's called teamwork, Hachi.
We originally first started matching up sometimes in 1v1 in like early Halo 1, and he's incredibly difficult opponent. Like, he's somebody that was in a time where you couldn't play the game as much as you'd like for Halo 1. Zyos got that game time in. Like if he ever could have just some noob come over and play one-on-one all day, he would do that all day. Whereas like Halo 1 for most of us was LAN once a weekend or whatever, and get together friends whenever you can. But he was just a machine of putting time into the game, and he was just such a strong player, especially back then, and the work ethic was just something to be absolutely admired.
So serious.
His business.
I just think of him as just the most serious individual ever.
As you go into like gaming, you're like, all right, we're going this because we got like some of the actual joy and love and excitement you can see out of playing this. And like he was someone where it's like, yeah, you didn't really get to exactly see that, but maybe deep down I'm sure he felt a lot of that excitement or fulfillment from winning or performing in front of like larger crowds. But I think your question was like, how do we become rivals, and how did Trash Talk evolve from like a rival standpoint? After we had teamed, we had won 2 tournaments in a row, and then got an opportunity where approached the Ogres with me and Killer N, and they accepted, and understandably so. He was just like, when I told him, he was not thrilled. He was like, I want you to know this means we can never team again. I was like, understand.
Wow.
Like, I think no matter what, people are going to always be upset or maybe not react great at the time if you part ways. But I think as long as you handle it in the right way, I think people like are chill in the long run.
Yeah.
But it was a situation there, and then I think from there maybe just kind of like a little bit maybe like rivalry or bad blood there, like wanting to play against me or compete against me, and him getting the better of me sometimes, me getting the better of him other times, and so I think that's maybe how it started. And then Trash Talk, he was like this unique personality. I think a lot of times we look up to like different TV characters, and we're like, oh, look at this character, and like they play this character. It's like Zyos and a lot of people like in Halo, if you almost look at it from a lens of like them being like some sort of TV character, it's interesting to look at it from that angle, because you just start to be like, oh, like Zyos is just a serious person. Like some of the things he says just absolutely fucking hilarious. And like, the way he carries himself, and like, all sort of things. And like, he's a super serious guy, but then also he was one of the only ones I felt like that didn't back down or fully fear me or our team. Most of the people just kind of like rescinded, and he was one of the few that was like willing to like bark out and shit talk when they got the better of us at moments, whether it's a moment in a game. Whereas most of the people were just like too scared to do that.
Number 4, Exit Wounds, led by Zyos, whose cutthroat business-first attitude has earned him a reputation for putting his paychecks before his teammates.
People see me as an intense competitor that takes it seriously, and so a lot of people are driven off by that.
All these teams are driven to succeed, but they all know that walking away with the championship this season will not be easy.
I know all the old Halo heads are going to love that anecdote. And speaking of the old days, as we're in the timeline of Halo CE, when was it that you realized that this could be an actual career path for you? Was it during Halo CE, or was it a little bit after when you started getting the sponsorships to roll in Halo 2?
After, but I think it was kind of like a multi-step process for me. When I was out of high school, at one point I was just working like a summer job. Okay, I'll work at the post office for a few months of the year, work full-time there, and then, doing the math there, where when I came up to the next summer, I was like, all right, I can either just work full-time at the post office, or I can attend these tournaments. Which one am I going to make more? And doing the math, I was like, I actually will make more, even excluding travel costs and all sort of things, just by doing Halo tournaments and doing well at them. That's like one step. Like at that point, it's like, all right, I'm not making an insane amount of money. I don't think it would be even considered a really great living for if I was doing that full time throughout the whole year. But I was like, all right, I was doing some early years of college. I was doing that in the summer and traveling to tournaments throughout the year and making some money. Like I think if you compare that to any other, let's say, early year college students, like most of them probably aren't making $20,000 a year or $30,000 a year. So like maybe one of the first couple of years doing something like that. And then as it grew into like Halo 2 and getting on TV and those sort of things, it got to a spot where I was like, okay, like I can actually make some real serious money here. I'm going to put college on pause and kind of go full force into this.
Walshy's on top of the world right now. The 22-year-old David Walsh from Grand Rapids, Michigan, made $70,000 playing video games last year.
But I kind of always took it into like steps. It was like, all right, kind of went from working a full-time job in the summer and going to college full-time to no full-time job in the summer, college full-time, and then kind of like, all right, no job in the summer, part-time college. And it was like, all right, no job, no college, full game.
All right, guys, here's to Walshy.
I am very excited and proud of him. And he said, I don't know how long this ride's going to be. I know I'm not going to be, nor do I believe I want to be a pro gamer all my life. But he says, I know I'm going to find the path of what I want to do by doing this. You never know how long the ride's going to be. So you better enjoy it and you better make some good sound decisions while you're on it. And he's doing that.
I love what you just said there, Dave, because I think that's a really, really good tip for anyone who's looking at this and is like, how can I take this to the next step? Don't quit your day job, right? If Dave Walsh didn't do it, winning all these tournaments, maybe there's some truth to that.
And each person's situation is completely different. You know what I mean? Some people, aren't afforded luxury to, maybe like live at home during different times or, so it's every single situation's different, but I think it can be very risky until you hit like a certain level of success to like drop everything else, because even though you are, technically have most time to put into the game, I would argue that you get a lot of diminishing returns throughout that time versus having some other stability in your life or something to like, kind of turn you on and off into gaming. Like there was something special about getting done with my college class and be like, I cannot wait to land this weekend at Michigan State and go play some Halo 1. And there was something very special about that. Or like same with early Halo 2 was like, it's like, all right, well, get done with this class and I'm driving home immediately and just gaming Halo 2 all night. And there was like something nice about that break and something nice about those life necessities. A lot of people just fully index into gaming, which we've seen it can be very lucrative for the very top. That's something that people always need to acknowledge. It's like, yeah, the very, very top, if you're number one in streaming, number one in this game, number one, like you're going to make out just fine. But it is very top heavy still, even in the biggest esports. It's like there's a big difference between number 1 and number 10 or number 15. And it's not like it's magnitude's different.
You kind of mentioned it before about when you approached the Ogre Twins to team. I know you had been playing against them for a while before that. What made you ultimately approach them? Did you think that they were the strongest competitors at the time? Was it no question to you? And how did you recognize you guys had such good teamwork and chemistry?
A few events later, Walshy decided to join forces with the Ogre Brothers and Killer N, forming Team Domination.
At that time, and Halo 1 is no question that they were the best. So it was like, and it's going to be very difficult to convince somebody to team with you otherwise, unless you give them a reason to. And so put together a team to beat them. And I think that was always it was the long-term goal, was like beat them and then get them to join. Wow. If there was a way to shortcut that, and I was like, yeah, hey, you guys want a team right now? Find a way to take off one or two teammates. Would have done that, but this was really the only path. And so, that was the plan. They were by far the strongest in Halo 1.
Yeah, then Halo 2 comes out, and you're still with the Ogres. At the time, you're actually with Killer N, who I actually teamed with for a brief stint in Halo 3. Very interesting guy, Killer N. Shout outs to him. But at the time, you actually dropped him and picked up Saiyan, even though you had just won the last Halo 1 event with Killer N. Can you recall what went into that decision, and what did you see in Saiyan?
Yeah, that one's a really tough one. There's got to be very limited amount of rosters that went down undefeated. And it's like, that was a roster that never lost. Me, Ogres, and Killer N, like, we never lost a tournament teaming together.
Wow.
I think Killer N was incredible at the game. I think the way we just went was we saw Saiyan early on in Halo 2, when, like, throughout the league game or whatever, like, he was grinding that early. They had teamed with him previously also in Halo 1. They were really good friends. And, I also prioritized wanting to have like that friendship and great vibe. And so I think we agreed to bring back Sane on based on like their previous team with him, the limited interactions I had with Sane. He was always awesome and nice. And you're now in a game where you're grinding 40 to 60 hours a week or whatever it would be with your teammates. versus like Halo 1 before was like, you show up for a weekend for a LAN, you go play the LAN or at the tournament, and it was that. And so it was nothing against Killer M. Skill wise, even personality wise, we just really vibed with Sane really well, and he just looked really strong going into Halo 2.
And speaking of moving along in that timeline into 2005 with the launch of Halo 2 and MLG hosting competitive tournaments, they actually ran a circuit of 10 around the nation. You won all but one of them. The only event you lost was that Philly event, which I think was just Team Slayer Carbon. They just got, or was it straight ripping? Either way,
straight ripping.
A little fluky.
I wouldn't even say it's fluky in that sense. Like, our focus on that one was Halo 1 the entire time. So the Halo 1 and the Halo 2 tournament there. And we were like, all right, well, we can't lose the Halo 1 side of this because some people are going to think they're the best at Halo 1.
Wow.
And so we won every event in the Halo 1 tournament there. So there's like a 2v2, a 4v4, and a 1v1 war free-for-all. Maybe there's all 4 of those. Our team took first place in all of those. And then when it came to the Halo 2 tournament, we took second place.
All right, we're here at the end of MLG Philly, Halo Nationals 2. We're with Straight Rippin' here, who have just taken first place at the tournament with 98 teams, ousting Team 3D, who has been undefeated all season.
Based on watching 3D play previous tournaments, that we figured they were beatable. That lockout game was the game that kind of set it in for me.
We had them on lock that whole game, even though it was 50-40. Like, they were camping really bad, and they really had...
Yeah, I felt like we outplayed them like every minute of the game.
I think it was about the nature of Team Slayer that allowed you guys to...
It has nothing to do with it. Even if it was objective, I would rather have played objective.
But to be fair, they actually had real strats and prep there, and we just literally just prepped and LAN for the Halo 1 tournament. I like how I'm making excuses for tournaments 20 years ago.
No, that's, again, another interesting anecdote, and I didn't even know that that event did feature Halo 1, and that you guys were primarily focused on that. At that tournament, a Team Slayer only event, I remember Zyos swinging the sword around on Gemini, just camping the portal. And I always
literally
wondered,
just staring at the portal, swinging the sword. Like, I just have a vivid memory of that in my mind for some reason.
I always wondered after that, how were you guys so far ahead of the competition during this time period? And do you think that you guys understood the spawn system better than everyone? Was it superior communication? Outside of that Team Slayer event where you guys were still focused on Halo 1, now that you guys are starting to form that dynasty, we're at the beginning of it, what was it that made you guys so special?
I would say it's not one thing. It's just a little bit of everything a little bit better. And so I felt like individual shot-wise, better. Just understanding of where to be, when to be, what to do, better. Just better macro awareness. When it came to practicing and learning, we're, I would say, leaps and bounds ahead of people. Just like, we wouldn't just go into practice and not understand anything. We'd be able to talk through different scenarios and what we should do different, why, and really make steps and improvements every single time versus just each person like screaming, individually learning and like hoping it all comes together. Instead, it was very much learning how to get on the exact same page. Yeah, spoiler alert, I do want to write a book at some point around like just kind of my approach to learning, gaming, and competitive gaming. A lot of those fundamentals or steps we took, I think, are very applicable to a lot of other games,
Agree.
I look at things like best case scenario, worst case scenario, and in between, like, let's say, Beaver Creek Team Slayer. And we would say, okay, absolute best case scenario, we have Sniper, we have Rockets, we have Overshield. What do we want to do? How are we going to maximize this lead as best we can? How are we going to make sure that isn't just wiping them once, they get spawned somewhere else better, and then they clear out? Instead, it's like, how do we turn this into 12, 15, 20 uncontested kills? And we would talk through those sort of things. We talk through, okay, here are the best spots. And then, all right, these are the core positions that are needed, but this last one can be kind of a flex position. This person, some of the time, should be down here based on if they're portaling. This person can be back here. There would be a couple of spots that were always requirements, would be like top Rockets or top of red base. And then the other spots could be a bit more flexy depending on the situation. And so as we talk through scenarios, we, one, learn what we should be doing. If we had disagreements, the way I've learned through that is generally if you have disagreement, it comes down to something situational where it's like you both are right. It's like one person is correct given this situation where opponents are in this spot and the other person is correct during the other situation. So you start to get through all those, you start to work through and untangle all these differences in strategy, and you start to become this well-oiled machine because you've talked through it, you believe in it, and you just do it. And all of a sudden you hear 2 or 3 part and just like, oh, I don't even have to think about that. I'm going here. We already talked about this, but I also understand why I should be doing this. It's all those steps. And so when we already have a lead, and then on top of that, like, we're learning, evolving, and just getting better at any way we can. It was just, the lead just kept building further and further until people kind of like, oh, dang, this team's really tough to beat.
It makes so much sense. And it reminds me of like a lot of the best rosters that I've been a part of. It's like we had that similar structure where it's like we talk through scenarios and we have a game plan for the very beginning of the game, the mid game, the end game, what to do when we're in disadvantage. And it makes a lot of sense that you guys went through that. I recall, it's funny that you brought up Beaver Creek because if I recall correctly, I think you guys lost Beaver Creek TS to either like Carbon or Straight Rippin'. And then the very next time you matched against that same team, at the next event, you guys beat them like 50-18 or something ridiculous. It's like they must have gone back to the drawing board on Beaver Creek TS and learned something and then just came back and absolutely crushed it. It was like one of the biggest blowouts in Team Slayer in Halo 2 history, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was the end of 2006 season. We had lost like 2 or 3 events in a row to them, with Beaver Creek, I believe, either being the last game or at least one of the games.
This is huge. Final Boss needs to take advantage here. This game's pretty much over.
Sand shields are recharged. We climb on board now with Walshy. Moving towards the middle, shooting at Ghost, gets a double kill on Gandhi, and Ghost 46-42. Final Boss is making a comeback. Here comes Shockwave. He's done. Final Boss within 3. Walshy trying to take this entire game on his shoulders and be the hero and force a deciding game 7. Look at the intensity on his face. And there's Walshy.
Karma's standing up. What is he doing?
If I recall correctly, it was like we lost 3 tournaments to them, and we lost Beaver Creek all 3 times. And I think 2 of the 3 times, Beaver Creek was the final game.
Oh, wow.
So we lost like 06 Nationals, final game, Beaver Creek Slayer. And as we went into the off season, I was just like, I'm never losing that fucking game type or mode again.
Does he get the kill?
Let's turn this weakness into big strength and, kind of really fine tune that, and got to a point where, yeah, we just absolutely destroyed every single team.
Just goes to show that work ethic can pay off. And I'm looking forward to your book, man. If you start talking about some of the keys to success when it comes to gaming and what, worked for you and your team, I think a lot of current players should be looking forward to that and reading every single page because it's got a lot of good intel, I'm sure.
I need to get to writing. It's been something I've wanted to do for a long time, and haven't found the time to, but it is something I will do at some point, hopefully within the next 5 years.
Around this time in the timeline, I recall an evening where we had just wrapped up with customs. It was myself, the Ogre Twins, and you. And I remember begging the 3 of you to start creating content. I had just released the first ever MLG montage and was a big believer that this could help propel the scene forward, especially with lands taking place months apart from each other. I felt like content could really bridge the gap. After pleading to the 3 of you guys, the Ogre Twins' response was, Makowski, montages are for noobs. Halo pros win tournaments. And I remember feeling pretty dejected, like I would probably never get invited into another lobby with you guys. But then you chimed in with a little enthusiasm and said, so what's this montage stuff? Like, how do you get into it? What was it about content at this time in the timeline that piqued your interest in it and got you to ultimately get involved directly in the scene, creating one of the most famous montages in gaming history?
When I went to events back then, even when it was super small and like kind of on the come up, I was like, the only reason that I have the potential to have this job or career or make money doing this is because these people are here. The moment that all these people are gone, I'm gone and I'm back working at the post office. And so I always had like such a great appreciation for like, we're growing this together and we're seeing where this can go, because we all knew how passionate we were about gaming. We knew that it can and should be big. How big and how quick it'd go, we didn't know. But I think the community is such a big part of that. But I would also say on the flip side, gaming back then, or even now, it's like there's this weird catch-22 of you want to like do as much content and build your name up, but at the same time, you almost don't want to give away too many strats or too many things. Like if you're going pure competitiveness, like you don't have basketball teams streaming their practices or streaming their scrims and stuff. Like gaming is one of these weird ones where it isn't large enough yet or developed enough yet where it's almost a requirement to do this extra content to build up your name, build up your brand, make extra money, help build up the scene. And so on one hand, you have a lot of incredibly skilled gamers that are like, is being the best just not enough? Can I not just like grind this and be number one? Is that not good enough? I also have to run a social media account. I have to record videos, do vlogs, do all these sort of things. Like, can I just not be the best and that be enough? And so I understand both sides, but gaming is in that spot where you have to kind of do both. And there's very few amount of people who get away with not doing both and being very successful at the top.
Very well said. We talked to Royal 2 about it as well. He's got, in my opinion, one of the most entertaining streams. I don't know if you've ever watched a Royal 2 stream, but he's just always off the walls. And it's like, man, this guy is not only one of the best players, but he's also the most entertaining. And it's like, those are the type of people that even when they're done competing are going to have a flourishing career ahead of them. If you guys are pros that are watching this, you need to expand your horizons, make sure you're putting out that content. That's what people love for sure. I wanted to talk a bit about this same time frame, 2005 and 2006, when it came to like content and like gaming culture as it entered the mainstream. So before this time, competitive gaming didn't really have a big spotlight, but right then is when MTV True Life, they did the series on T-Squared. They followed a few Super Smash Brothers pros. And then the USA Network runs the whole season of the MLG Pro Circuit, which of course you were featured on. Double needling T-Squared on national television. What can you recall from your time on these shows, and what was it like maybe behind the scenes?
I didn't realize at the time like how big it would be or what would happen, but with it being on TV, it gave this credibility that didn't really exist anywhere else. It's like, oh, I'm on TV on Saturday mornings, like every episode, like, which is insane. It was weird and like didn't really hit me until like I like woke up and watched the very first episode one morning, and I was like, oh, that's insane. And then like was at the mall shopping, and then someone was like, oh my god, are you so and so? Can I get a picture? Like me and my friend watched the episode and I heard you were from Grand Rapids or saw you from Grand Rapids. I was like, whoa, like people actually, it's on TV and people actually watch it, which makes
right,
sense.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't a Halo gamer, if you saw something on TV that had a game on it and you were that interested and cared about games back then, you were watching that 100%.
T-Squared over there? I got a present for him.
And you're wondering when your game is going to get that same sort of treatment, or what you can do to follow that path if you were a skilled gamer.
Your team does not belong in this match against Final Boss. Yeah! That's some showmanship right there.
Such a cool time frame, man. And if I'm not mistaken, around the same time, maybe this was your young business brain getting to work. I think around the same time is when you launched Kineto, which was your clothing brands. Talk us through this venture. Was this a bit of a learning curve when it came to launching a business at the time? And would you consider doing something like that again?
Yeah, definitely a learning curve on it.
This is where I spent about 45, 50 hours a week.
There was a lot of good and a lot of bad decisions throughout it.
It's pronounced Kineto. Revolution of a different kind.
There's clearly an appetite for people who were gamers and want to identify as gamers. I think when I created the line, I wanted it to be more like kind of skate culture. And it's like, wait, no, like this should be helping define what gaming culture is like.
I'd like this to be like the Hurley of video gaming. Hurley is the skateboarders, but Kineto is the video gamers.
People aren't trying to buy skate clothes as a gamer. They want to wear something that represents their hobbies and what they care about. And so I think there was some areas that I touched on that did good and bad there. For me, I felt like there was a good opportunity in the market to do something like that. It had had decent amount of success. But like I said, also had a lot of learnings with it.
I'm just saying, I'd still buy Walshy as my homeboy t-shirt if you made one again, Dave. Dipping back more into the memory banks, specifically ones that I fondly recall, and got two of them here. The first one, we're in an 8's lobby again, playing some customs. We're waiting for one to join, and T-Squared joins up. And this is right after he appeared on MTV True Life. So he's larger than life. And when he joined, he said, oh, hell no, I'm not playing with this guy. You realize he's ass and only here to hit a clip and put us in his stupid video. I'm not playing if he's playing. To which you replied, Mac is staying, Tom. And I was shook. I've never felt like in my life like I've had someone stand up for me like that. So that's something that I always like it still sticks with me to this day. And it really just, again, it goes back to impacts that you've had, Dave, that I don't even know if like you realize how monumental it is. And now fast forward to Halo 3. I'm attending my first event, MLG, at Orlando 2008. We meet in the lobby, meet in person for the first time. And you invite me up to the Red Bull suite to land Final Boss. Now, keep in mind, I was on an amateur squad. So this is like the Kansas City Chiefs inviting a high school football team to a scrimmage. So absolute madness. I remember just being starstruck, like, wow, this went all the way up in the elevator to the 30th floor with you. And I'll never forget, like, wow, this is what you like literally look up to and aspire to. And we talked about this earlier, tying this back into your career, but you were really the top dog. But you were still the most willing player or pro player to give the little guy a shot. When do you recall this interlinking with your competitive career, where you gave a relative unknown a chance to team with you and it led to great success?
I think it sounds like I've maybe had a lot more times where maybe it's words of encouragement, or whether it's game with somebody online. It sounds like I've had maybe a lot more of those versus I don't think I've really had many times where I'm like, here's just a full chance to team with me. You know, you're fully unproven, you're going to team with me. But I feel like at least always had a really good eye for talent. I think I've always followed that. And then I was always just too, like, you know, just want to treat people like humans. Like, I think
crazy concept.
Yeah.
Wild.
I think, you know, getting out of high school, I don't want to treat life like high school and like, you know, treat like weird, like little just full on social circles or like exclude people or whatever. Like, I think we all share the same hobby. And so to answer your original question, like, where has this come back? In some cases, it sounds like, I remember like Hines sometimes telling me this, where he's like, hey, I went to my first free for all and like I did really well. And you told me like, I think you're literally good and like you should give a shot or whatever. And then years later, he's coming back and beating me. So maybe I shouldn't have given those words of encouragement. I should have just like, you know, tap on the shoulder, like, you know, someone who's really good, like, you ain't got a chance, kid. Get the fuck out while you can. You're wasting your time, kid.
It's so funny because I feel like you do have this dichotomy about you, Dave. If people have only experienced you in like certain contexts, like you talking shit to Golden Boy, like they might think you're a fucking asshole. But then there's like other people like us that have these like hilarious or like great, like wholesome memories where you like were super kind to us and it made an impact on us. It was just hilarious, like the dichotomy there. But yeah, that seems like one where you should have put your asshole hat on to Hines, because he ended up becoming an absolute beast at the game, and now he's a beast behind the scenes. Shout out to Hines.
I got to get one name out of you in this. It relates to this question. So maybe not a complete noob or like a complete unknown, but who's the most relative unknown that had a lot of skill, a little bit of success on the circuit that you feel like you shepherded into success in winning tournaments in MLG?
Like you're saying, like guided and shepherded into these spots. Like I think that's like for me, I looked at it as like, oh, maybe I added certain people like my list because I found like good people like play free for all or game with, versus like I'm not sitting there and going through VOD review with them and really coaching them on like all these different things. It's probably one more like what Eli was saying. It's more like an accelerant. Like, guess what? They probably would have made the same spot, like let's say years later, but maybe they got into more games quicker to sharpen their skills, you know, months or years faster just by maybe having played with me a few times or impressing me and getting on my list. So I'd say like that's the best credit I could probably take.
What about Soviet?
Yeah. Basically, when Final Boss split up or kicked me off in 2008, it was Soviet like reached out to me immediately. He's just like, he made a really compelling case, like, give me a shot, like, let's do this. And like, you know, at that time too, he was also he was really sick at Halo 3, and then on top of that, he had won like, I want to say Halo 2 Nats for 1v1 and stuff. So like he showed the individual skill, and he seemed like he was willing to play and learn. And I was like, all right, well, I'm in this weird period, and I didn't fully think it through at the time, but I was like, you know what, worst case, I can do like one tournament and move on, but not realizing like, you know, when hurricane season goes on, you like some rosters settle, and it's not like you do one thing and then move on. And so I don't regret Team of Soviet. He was a great player, and yeah, he was really good, but I think we just fell short that season.
He just had some crazy stand-up performances. He's a name that I feel like a lot of people that pay attention to Halo nowadays probably have no clue who the hell Soviet is because he was there and then he wasn't. Do you know what happened to him by chance? Like I think you were one of the last people to team with him, if I'm not mistaken.
He definitely teamed for he definitely competed for another year or two at least. And I know he teamed with like Shockwave and some other people. I wish I knew, to be honest. Like I think one thing that's been difficult for me over the years and something I wish I did better was, staying closer with some of like the friends and teammates that I had. Cause you kind of go from this spot of, playing or talking for 40 plus hours a week. And then sometimes it goes to, you just see each other a few tournaments and then sometimes just like radio silent or whatever. And so
yeah,
he's one that I've unfortunately lost touch with. And if someone listening to this podcast knows how I can get in touch with them, that'd be awesome. Like, add him on Facebook or like get a life update from him. But I unfortunately don't have an update.
We all know about the historic dominance of Final Boss in Halo 2. You lost a handful of events in the span of Halo 2, but in the very last event of that era, MLG Nationals 2007, this is now with Strongside on the team, you guys swept the entire bracket, not dropping a single game to cement your legacy as without a doubt the best Halo 2 team of all time. Looking back on it, would you say this was one of your personal best events? Was this tournament in particular one that you guys practiced heavily for?
Undoubtedly practiced heavily for. I think from an individual performance standpoint, yeah, I would say like that event, where I also remember something like probably 07, I felt like I came through like a vengeance and I felt like I was playing incredibly well there.
Carbon, check this out. He sticks Shockwave, stops the flag, BXR's Ghosty Army, charges over to Pink Tower, makes quick work of Gandhi and heads back in for the flag return, beats down Ghosty Army, and makes the flag return.
It was very important to me and us to win that event and remove any questions or doubt, because the reality that could happen right now is if we lost that event, there's a chance that you're just like, hey, you guys won, like let's say 12 out of 14 events in 2006, 2007. But Stray Ribbon won the last one. Like, there's argument to be made who was the best Halo 2 team. They won the very last and most important one. And so I think for us, even though I think we very clearly were the best Halo 2 team, we want to just remove any asterisks or any little anecdotes that people could like potentially poke at. And
you were thinking ahead.
Really
I see.
Yeah, really happy for that.
You guys completely dominate the end of Halo 2. At the launch of Halo 3, it felt like the dominance would continue. Despite how different the game was, your team still won the first Halo 3 event as well, MLG Meadowlands 2008. But after this, it actually turned out to be your personal last major tournament win. The rest of that first year in Halo 3, you did find yourself a few second place finishes, but never found another first place. What were your thoughts about Halo 3? Was Halo 3 just not quite your game? Did you not like the game as much as Halo 1 and 2, or was this just like you're kind of at the end of your career? What did you think about that?
Yeah, good question. I think as you go from game to game, the game changes. Let's say, I don't know, if you had to put a random number on, like let's say the game's like 30% different. Like, it's 70% all the exact same core Halo skills, and then 30% different throughout all the different maps, the shooting style, mechanics, whatever. If I reflect back on like Halo 3, I think there's some parts that I was really good, some parts that I was not so good. And then I think I really didn't enjoy Halo 3 online.
It was so bad.
Yep.
Halo 2 was like, you shoot the same, but like people's shots hit a little harder or you just die a little quicker or whatever. But then, you get on land, it's just like shots just all hit. Whereas like Halo 3, it felt like you almost had to have like a different leading style. You have all these blood shots. You're like, well, my bullets are hitting them here. Should I just still be aiming this way? Or what's naturally going to happen is your thumbs and the way you shoot is going to evolve to how shots register. And so sometimes like a whippier shot or whatever you got to do to like have shots hit. So, yeah, I don't know. I gave like 5 or 6 excuses there. Is that enough? Do we want a few more excuses for Halo 3?
Well, you're right, though. There was Halo 3 was a massive switch. And I always told people, Halo 2 to Halo 3, it's not like it's still Halo. It might as well be Gears of War or Call of Duty. And especially in this standpoint, because Halo 2 had a hit scan battle rifle, somewhat projectile. But Halo 3 was like, you'd have to lead the reticle an entire head level off of the player. And like you said, you'd almost be like... conditioned to think, oh, well, I need to lead it differently based on the way the online hit registration works, which could kind of create some bad habits for you. So I don't think it's so much an excuse rather than just what the game was at that time.
Yeah, I think the only thing like Halo 3 versus Halo 2 is Halo 2 was much more faster paced than I think a lot of people realize or give credit for, and just like the decisions you can have, whether you're engaging or disengaging from a fight. Whereas I think Halo 3 definitely rewarded some really strong shots. Like you're making a decision to go down a route, and like you're committed to that decision. Like if you look on pit and I'm going long haul, if I get caught in the middle of long haul, or even if I get towards the end of long haul, it's who's hitting their shots wins that fight. If if I compare that to something like midship, and let's say I get caught out in the open a little bit, I can do so many different things. I can duck my head, run away. I can take this cover here. I can, finagle and fight this battle in a different way. Whereas Halo 3, there's a lot of times just like, all right, I'm making the decision, and a lot of it comes down to pure execution here from hitting certain shots. Maybe it didn't suit my skills as well. Also, I think looking back on Halo 3, if I look at like placings and stuff, I think things would look a little different too with, getting a first or two under the belt or whatever. But it's like, I had lots of really, really strong placements with multiple rosters. Like I think took multiple second places with Instinct. Did I get multiple second places with Carbon as well? At least I know.
Second, third.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there was that. And yeah, I felt there was, still very strong showings, and even taking like some that would argue like ragtag teams with like, Carbon roster where a lot of people that were not full of misfits or leftovers, but it's like, we weren't like the first choices for a lot of teams. And it's like, we were taking some seconds and thirds. And it's like, I think that is a really strong showing. But it's tough because a lot of times it's like people remember first or nothing.
Now we're in the thick of the MLG era. This is 08-09, and you guys were a dynasty in Halo 2. You're still on Final Boss at this time. You're having some success in Halo 3, but then the unthinkable happened. You were dropped by Final Boss. You never really made any comments about that outside of your famous taking candy from a baby interview after you got a little bit of revenge. Put yourself back in that timeline. What would you have said to your teammates on Final Boss, like the Ogre Twins? And how did that decision ultimately come about to, in a lot of our eyes, drop one of the best players in the game?
I think there was, definitely some inner turmoil and issues that, maybe as like late teens, early 20s, like aren't able to, properly navigate and talk through. Any long relationship you have is going to, have different hurdles, and weren't able to like figure out some of that stuff. And so I think, looking back, we had such a incredible dynasty and careers, and then, had some butting of heads, but I guess that's what goats do, right?
No.
But we're going through the timeline here. Fast forward beyond the classic Halos. At what point did you realize maybe it was time to hang up the sticks? And at the time, what did you put your focus towards?
I always told myself if I wasn't having like the fun or success with it, that's the time to go. I mean, I think they kind of go hand in hand. Like when you're trying to do something for a living that's competitive, if you're winning, things are gonna be fun. Even if it's a title you don't like as much, it's still gonna be you're gonna find the fun in that and the success in that. But they kind of go hand in hand as well. Like you're not having a lot of success, you're not having a lot of fun, you're going through all these politics or team drama and all this sort of things, and so it just kind of all piles on. Let's say even if I commit and play for years and I have some success and I win a few tournaments, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to matter, and I'm gonna have to make this leap at some point. It just seemed right at that time where it's just like, sometimes you get done with a tournament or an event and you're like, oh man, that didn't go well. I am super motivated, jump on and let's keep gaming, let's grind this back. And then sometimes you're just like, man, I'm not enjoying this. Let's figure out what's next. And so I think it, and I never wanted to like retire multiple times, but I was just like, I think, getting to be about that time, I think it's very top heavy. And like, unless I feel like I'm compete at the highest, and I feel like I can go in and win, and I can put together a roster that's gonna be there. Might be time to figure out those next steps in life.
What were those next steps at that time? What did you initially focus on right after retiring from competing?
Right after, I just took a long break and kind of like did some soul searching. I was like, all right, what do I want out of life next? What do I do next? And, you know, how applicable are some of my skills to maybe the gaming industry? Funny enough, it doesn't feel like a lot of companies value or understand how to, at that time at least, understand how to value, you know, professional gaming experience or esports industry experience.
Yeah.
I ultimately got a degree in computer science and I did game dev for a bit, but yeah, I kind of dabbled in a few things. You know, I did a few Prima guides, I did some commentary, you know, still staying involved with the Halo scene. I tried a little content creation and was just kind of figuring out what I really like to do. Yeah. Did some soul searching, did some different ventures.
Wow. I can only imagine what that was like for you, because in my eyes, you had the greatest impact on not only Halo, but NA Esports as a whole. You were a true pioneer. You mentioned that earlier in the interview yourself. When you look back at this time of your life, does the weight of it hit you? Do you realize how much of an impact that you made on the gaming space?
Not really, I think. You know, like you guys will tell me some of these stories and you're like, you invited me to this free-for-all lobby and did this, and it cascaded all these things. I'm like, man, you're just talking about random free-for-all number 243 on...
It was just a Tuesday
whatever,
for me.
Yeah. And funny enough, I get some of those questions sometimes where someone's like, do you remember this matchmaking game I played against you? I was like, I'm going to stop you right there. I promise you I do not remember this matchmaking game. Nothing against you, but like I played countless thousands of matchmaking games, and unless like something absolutely insane or absurd happened, like I'm not going to remember that game. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I do sometimes get the gravity or appreciation or understanding that, you know, like it's always super flattering hearing that from any competitor or pro or like even, you know, superstars in the scene these days. You know, like if sometimes like a Nate Shot or a Hex would be like, yo, you're one of the reasons I got into this or did this. And like, dang, that's insane.
As you look back with 2020 hindsight, and it's always different when you look back, but is there anything that you would have done differently, or any word of advice for anyone who's now venturing into this crazy world that we know as esports?
I mean, yeah, I would have done a million things differently if I was, you know, able to 2020 hindsight and reverse time. But I think it depends on somebody's goals. I think you have to be super competitive if you are really trying to just like be the best at a certain game, because right now you're also battling all the finances going against you in many of these cases. Like you are much more incentivized to be a top content creator and streamer versus a pro gamer these days. A lot of times the way the path seems to go for me, from what I'm witnessing, is people rise up through the pro gaming side, and then as they get that following, they just are making so much more money, much less stress, so much less conflicts to just do streaming and content creation. That's like, well, do I stress over playing this game X hours a week and go to these competitions and missing this many streams? Or do I just cash in here and do this? And so it all depends on what your definition of success is. If your definition of success is how am I going to win the most tournaments, I think your approach to that is going to be different from how do I make a living in this wild world of esports? If I was to try to give some just boiled down info to somebody like trying to just succeed in gaming and esports, whether that's pro gaming or whether it's content creation, learn how to learn. That's weird to say, but learn how to identify mistakes you're making in a game. Learn how to identify something that doesn't look as good in your content or something that looks really good in someone else's content. Like how be able to evaluate and pinpoint very like objective statements that people would agree with, or subjective statements that people would agree with, where it's like, I think that our team plays whatever too slow or bad in this position. How do we fix this? Or I think that the cutscenes on this are really bad. Or Makowski goes on rants for 35 seconds. How do we shut him up during this moment? My God, we have a podcast with him and he's talking, but we don't want him talking. What do we do? But whole point being is learn how to learn. And if you can stick with something, get better at it, treat people right along the way, I feel like you kind of create your own luck and things kind of work out in the long run.
I couldn't agree more with the last part of that. Treat people well along the way, because I feel like if I don't know, if I was more of an asshole, I don't know if I'd still be sitting here. Everything that led to me even being in the position I'm in now I run a high school esports league. It wouldn't have started if I wasn't kind and taught Makowski spawns on Amplified, because then he remembered that. And then 10 years later asked me to coach a team once he was part of an org. Yeah, I don't know. It's just butterfly effect. You don't realize the impact that you make on people along the way. And it's like you're planting seeds that could eventually grow into opportunities so far down the line that you just have no idea is even happening until you're reflecting on it 10 years later. Like, wow, I'm so glad that I was nice to that person. And now they're offering me this amazing opportunity. So yeah, be nice to people along the way. You do create your own luck. I definitely agree with that.
Well, Walshy, your influence and contributions will always be remembered, but the journey of Halo continues on with new stories waiting to be written and new championships ready to be claimed. Let's pivot to the upcoming season of HCS. Transitioning into a career as an analyst, when did you first start casting, and what would you describe the experience of being in the broadcast booth and talking and casting over the main stage as opposed to being on it and on the sticks?
First tournament I casted, I think, was the immediate tournament after I retired. So I think it was like a pretty easy job for me to get, where Puck was like, yeah, come over and commentate this next one. And did that. I forget, like, was it Rhode Island, like, or MLG Providence? I don't remember, to be honest, which event it was. But that was my first one. I was kind of like gifted an instant seat into the early days of casting, because I, didn't really have to battle too many people for it. It felt like, or at least I had established myself as knowledgeable enough of the game and big enough figure in the scene. So I was instantly kind of like in a seat there. How do I feel on casting versus on the stage? I think the stage has higher highs and lower lows. Casting in comparison is significantly easier. Like, before, if I'm there for the weekend and I'm competing, I'm dialed in. I'm stressed out each night. I'm talking, what are we doing? Bot reviewing this. How are we going to do X, Y, or Z against this team? Whereas now casting, it's way easier. It's more like a vacation. Yes, I will review certain things, make sure I have certain things prepared before a match, but I'm not stressed and I'm not losing sleep before going on. I mean, I just get to talk about something that I know very in depth, and I just try to bring a few main pieces to the broadcast. Like, first off, I want to be entertaining. People are watching this because they want to be entertained. So I want to be entertaining. I want to be giving information to new and old heads of the game. So whether that's like some sort of Halo history or anecdote between players and some history, or even something in depth about the game, like as simple as, here's where this weapon spawns and how long it takes, and old heads get into that, but then, hey, here's exactly how the spawn system tends to work, and here's the steps these teams are holding, and even if you played this game every single day for the last years, you might not know this. And so I like to try to sprinkle in a little bit of all of that, so that it ultimately turns into an entertaining broadcast. And so first and foremost for me is entertainment. I feel like it could be different broadcaster, or like, maybe entertaining or more exciting or entertaining for some people if I index in one way and fully analytical and talked about certain things. But I'm trying to give what I think is the most entertaining version of talking over a game of Halo.
I don't know. I feel like Halo's in such a weird state where it's mostly just the diehard fans and people that are still playing that are watching. So it's like, you kind of got to appeal to everybody. You got to, like, don't dumb it down too much, but also keep it interesting and fun and lighthearted. And I think all of us on the casting side do a good job of that. We're always having fun and goofing off, man. Like, it's honestly a blast every time we get a chance to get on it. I feel like half the time I'm just making fun of Makowski, and the other half I'm like nerding out about what the players are actually doing. Like, it's a great experience.
All right. Well, with us as a Halo community in the aftermath of the wildest roster mania I'm sure you and I have ever seen, Dave. Can you think of a time where it was ever this close to where every team changes? And what are just some of your overarching thoughts on roster mania as it stands today?
Roster has always changed in between seasons. Let's be clear. I would say there's the rare one or two teams that weren't the first place team that stay together and don't change. That's always happened, but like every other team changes. Now we're in this spot where we've also had the number one team change, which really shakes things up. But one thing that's been really unique about Infinite is that it does feel like as the dust settles, you have quite a few really competitive teams, like near the top. Whereas in previous years, maybe it was just the talent pool was smaller or wasn't as skilled maybe back then. I wouldn't say the talent pool is smaller. You have a higher skilled, smaller talent pool now. And as you have these rosters shake up, it's like the gaps between, 1, 2, 4, 8 is like not as big as it was in the past. Before you'd have all these roster changes, it's like there's a clear number 1 and 2, and then like a massive gap, and here's number 3, 4, 5, and then a massive gap again. So
yeah,
that's one part that's been really interesting to see is the fact that we haven't really had as big of gaps. And I think that's more of a testament to, how good these players are and how good they've all been developing and learning from each other. And that we just haven't had like one standout team that just like dominates everything.
We'd like to acknowledge the time and energy that goes into every single one of these episodes, from question prep to post-production. It is countless hours, sometimes even a full day, 24 plus, of dedication from Eli, Kills, and myself. So if you'd like to support our endeavor or bring more Halo stories to the light, consider joining the Patreon. Members get exclusive early access to episodes like this, ad-free viewing, downloadable MP3s, outtakes, and more. And periodically, we'll even take questions from the Patreon members, which we had more than usual this time. So we'll ask a couple of those and expand on the segment just a little bit, since Dave's been very generous with his time here today. And that first question comes from one of the first ever supporters of the Patreon, the Dead Display, who asks, what aspects of the MLG era of Halo would you adopt to the HCS era of Halo?
I would find a better way for an individual to get recognized and have a individual path to a pro team or pro career. That was one thing that set Halo apart from any other team game out there, is that you had a free-for-all that every single person was forced to care about and did care about, and it was a true test of skill. And you were able to identify younger individual talent that didn't maybe know the teamwork, communication, politics side of forming a team, but was just this raw skill. And it was like the perfect pipeline for people to pick up new and better teams. But then on top of that, it gave something for an individual to strive for that didn't know everything else. Like it's asking a lot for someone to say, hey, technically you could come in and win if you can somehow put together 3 people of super high caliber skill and then get your teamwork and strategy and all these things down. You technically can win. But back then it was a tried and true proven formula that people were able to come through Halo 1 and Halo 2 free-for-alls, make their way onto top teams and have success. And that disappeared. Funny enough, even like Halo 3, because it was just the side free-for-alls was like, it was a side thing. People weren't forced to play it or care about it. The thing that needs to be solved is, or the thing that would be great to bring back, is an individual path that gives people a chance to make their name in the HCS and get on top team.
This next one is from John Flores. When it comes to assembling a team, what do you look for in a player that would make you go, yep, I'm picking him up?
In Halo, I think the most things are solved by shot still. It's like, it's still such a very skill-based game that, I would take the person that is winning the 10 or 20% more fights if all other factors are equal. That's at least where I started in the early days, was who are the demons that I can get on my team that can like outshoot, win their individual fights, and then I felt confident that I can curate the rest of it because I felt like a strategy or decision making. I felt like that could be taught, whereas I don't think you can fully teach that shooting skill is usually. I don't think you can be like, hey, just go in the firing range and do this, and this, and your shot's going to be better. Whereas we could do a VOD review and talk as a team, and your decision making be better. So selfishly, that's what I used to pick back in the day.
Interesting.
It is individual skill, and I felt like the rest could be taught. But there's validity to both sides. There's if you have 4 people who can all shoot but are just running around idiots and don't know how to do anything else, like you're gonna lose to a team that has people that actually know what they're doing and where to go. From my end, I've always looked at it from like the first place standpoint. Like I'm like, hey, to be the first place team, you have to have 4 people that are 4 of the best individual shots in the world, and then also get them on the same page. So I don't know what level this person's asking at, but that's what I would look for in the past.
This next question comes from Revelry. He says, and another one that you probably don't remember, but like you said, you just made such an impact on so many people's lives, Dave. He says, thank you, Walshy, for your willingness to take pictures with me at Worlds. Not all of my family approves of my ambition for esports. They don't say anything negative, but they don't really ask me about it either. Were friends and family of yours always supportive of the life you chose either way, or only once you started to succeed with it?
Ooh, that's a good question. A little bit of both. I think that I think my family, or I know my family, was overall supportive, like throughout everything I did. But like, I think it's fair to also say like I'm kind of an anomaly or exception in some of those cases. Like I feel like I have been pretty good at most things I do, or I've always taken very like smart and logical steps and paths. Like I think if I didn't do pro gaming, I think I would have found a lot of success in something else. Is my confidence level, or at least like how I feel about it. I think friends and family like clearly more supportive as things got successful. I think I've had the same talk with a friend in a band, and another friend was asking like, "Oh, it must be awesome! Like everyone must be so supportive of like this." And I was like, actually, I bet it was kind of one of those things like until the band made it big, like people was like, "What are you doing? Wasting your time, always doing this or this." And there are certain paths like this that kind of seem to yield like all or nothing results, which can be very difficult. Whether you're trying to be a touring band or a pro gamer, like yes, you have some intangible skills that can be applied, that you know about, and that you can learn, and you can have different life experiences. But when it comes to like putting it down on a resume, or climbing a corporate ladder, or turning it into XYZ or dollars outside of that one craft, it's not as transferable. I can understand that question a lot. But yeah, I would say probably more of the support you get from like friends and others is once you reach that level of success, or it's my advice in a situation like that would be to make sure you're taking like smart logical steps, that you're setting yourself up for the future. I think it should be somewhat apparent early on if you have the chops to like reach the very top of a game. I think to get pro and get into like the upper echelons of the game, I think there are ways you can work your way up to there. But I think if you're going to be number one, not to discourage others, but I do think that you kind of have that special something, or you probably reach a lot of like early success or turning of heads earlier on in those stages, like through your practice or through your matchmaking or whatever it is. At least that's my take on like being number one. Like that doesn't mean that someone couldn't prove that wrong, or someone couldn't come through and like still reach lots of success and through the competitive gaming side. But I think a lot of people will have their sights set fully on, okay, I need to make my living as a professional gamer. And it's like, there are a very few limited seats for that, especially in each game. And it's very competitive. You need to have your eyes and options open for other things you're going to do if that doesn't pan out, or for when that's done. Even someone like me, I'm no longer the competitive or professional Halo player, but I found other successful ways to stay in the gaming industry, because I didn't fully index in just on competitive gaming.
Great wisdom in there, and that entire rant. To be honest,
Totally agree.
Like, you got to be wary of saying like, "I love games. I'm going to go all in on games." Everyone that's ever been number one, we saw their skills at a very young age. Like Pistola at 12 when he was getting 100 kills in FFA. It's like we kind of just knew he would eventually be the best player in the world, and he did.
There's definitely a level of seeing is believing to Revelry's thoughts and question there. I remember for me and my parents, they're totally supportive of it now, but were not when I was back in high school. They thought I was ruining my life until Toyota flew down from their headquarters to sit in our kitchen and sign a contract to, be a part of our montages and some of the content we were creating all the way back in the 2000s. And I remember looking over at my dad like, yeah, see this, Dad? Like, this is the chief marketing officer of Toyota. And to Dave's point, you have to show your family and friends, like, this is for real, and so am I. So I think that was really well said by Dave. And last question from the Patreon crew, we got Chandler, who has an intriguing one, I think, here. He says, how might Halo balance maintaining its unique identity and appeal to, let's call them the boomers, while appealing to a younger generation?
I think we need the larger net to capture people, like through different means, like a battle royale. That's, there's been so many times people are saying like, oh, like, well, battle royales, that's the latest fad or whatever. It's like, people are still creating battle royales. Battle royales are still huge. Halo has a perfect sandbox for it. Would be an awesome way to get more people in the game or the ecosystem for something that they know and is digestible. Halo also has a massive problem of it being it has too high of a skill floor for entry. Yes, many of us can be like, oh, it's so easy to shoot this gun or this. Whereas, like, you show somebody how they can, play in a Call of Duty for the time to kill, or, many other titles. And so I think there's a lower end of the skill floor. There's got to be new ways to capture the attention of an audience, and can't just be the arena shooter itself. Even something like Call of Duty has a war zone, and it has its Black Ops 6 competitive mode. I would fix those two things, and then I think they just have to execute at the highest level possible. Games are super competitive these days, and I think that in comparison to some other titles out there, Halo and 343 hasn't executed at an S tier level when it comes to delivering its games. And so at some point, the game just has to be that damn good, and people will play it.
Well said. Well, that'll do it for our Patreon section. We are winding things down at the end of the road in an incredible episode with Walshy. We're moving on to the final segment, the quick cues. Now, Dave, these take one word answers. You can expand on it if you'd like, but we're going to go rapid fire here and let you shoot off that commando as we ask our first question. Your fondest Halo memory?
One word for this? Even Vegas 07 is multiple words.
No, it doesn't have to be one word. But they're supposed to be quick answers, quick questions, quick answers.
Quick answers. All right. Get these rules straight. All right.
So Vegas 07, like you said, you had just lost the previous national championship to Carbon. Straight Rippin was trying to steal the crown and maybe come up in the rear and have a place at the table as far as the conversation towards being the best Halo team. So fitting that you guys cementing yourself as the best Halo 2 team and maybe the best Halo team of all time as your fondest Halo memory. Who was your most difficult opponent that you faced throughout all of your competitions?
Oh, man. Maybe Ola. Maybe a Halo 3 Ola.
That's what I expected, yeah.
Well said. Yep. The Wizard, very difficult to kill. Even I remember in Halo Infinite, he'd find spots on like live fire where you just couldn't see his head. And I'm going, like, everyone now knows this spot, but only Ola's able to find it and execute it in a game scenario. So well said. I think Ola's a good one there. What's a Halo hot take that might have you roasted on social media for?
Halo hot take. What am I hot take? Man, I don't feel like that'd be a hot take. Halo hot take might be that I've heard this from someone else before. Is arena shooters? Do they have a big future? I mean, that's the Halo hot take. Like, it's, you know, Halo has been so successful at being an arena shooter for so long, and you've seen so many games, you know, evolve into something else, like a battle royale or all these other genres.
Extraction shooters even have kind
of. I feel like Extraction seems like it's like this thing that was. It is very popular for, you know, Tarkov or whatnot, but I feel like people kept thinking like that's gonna be the next genre, next thing, and it's like, I don't know. It just seems like people just want something good, and it doesn't have to fit exactly in a certain genre or take. It's just, you know, who's making something good. And I keep thinking about, like, you know, let's say they make the perfect arena shooter. Let's say it's the next perfect Halo or whatever it is. It's like, I'm curious to know how many people are interested and really want to play that outside of like the higher level competitive players.
Yeah.
You compare it to other games where you have these different like ebbs and flows of fun and lulls and periods, and like an arena shooter, you're just like, you're locked in, you're dialed in for like 10, 15 minutes, and like you don't really have as many of those moments where you're like, haha, that was so funny that nade did that and exploded me and kill you here. It's like they're rage-inducing moments where you want to throw your mouse or controller. It's very intense. It's very catered towards a heavy esports audience. Whereas even when I play something, let's say I play like an Apex Legends, there are a lot of like lulls in the game where it's like, oh, I have this rewarding moment. I'm looting this and I got the gold, you know, energy mag, or I got this, and you just have all these differences in the game, and you also aren't dependent on every single person in that lobby to have a good time. Like, you know, half the people in Apex Legends lobby could drop out, and it's like, well, I'm top half now. Let's get these next circle. Whereas one person in a arena shooter lobby or even a MOBA, and people have experienced these sort of things, can ruin the whole experience. And so like there's differences to be, there's arguments to be made around some of around these sort of game modes. And so maybe that's a hot take is what's the future of arena shooters?
I agree. And maybe it's a combination of all three, or who knows? I mean, I don't think anybody has the answer to that, but it's a compelling conversation nonetheless. Moving on along, favorite weapon throughout all of Halo?
Halo 1 pistol or Halo 2 BR? Yeah, I'll give two answers there.
Fair enough. We'll let that slide because I think those are the two I had in my head for you that you might say. Your favorite duo throughout all of Halo, your favorite teammate?
Despite him pranking me my whole life, I mean, I think Strongside is you know, he's my best friend. So
what was that like going back, and you guys recently competed in that Halo 2 land? What was it like to prepare for another tournament all the way deep into 2024?
It was special. You know, it was nice to like kind of dust off the sticks, practice, you know, get that intensity up. As we're all like old now. But it was, overall a fun experience. I'm super, super glad we got to do that with like Launch Roy inside, and you know, with like such a legendary squad.
It's a turn. That's going to be number 2.
Yeah, I know Eli and I still reminisce about landing with you at Salt Lake City and then at Swift Kill's basement. Definitely Halo 2 still delivering strong memories, even 20 years deep into its history. Crazy.
Also, fun fact or unfun fact, that's my lowest placing in a Halo 2 tournament ever.
What was it, like 4th, 3rd?
3rd place.
What?
20 years later.
Wow. He's washed.
He pulls the flag. He does. He pulls the flag out. The flag is available to grab. Is anyone there to secure it? It's going to be Walshy. He's looking to get himself the 3rd flag cap, but he's getting tagged and bagged. And wait a minute. Oh my goodness. Roy grabbed it, but the portal was blocked. The portal was blocked, and the flag gets stopped. Strongside, last player left alive. No freaking way. This is fucking incredible. Holy shit. What the hell?
I wanted to ask about this, but we don't want to take too much of your time, obviously, but man, I know that had to hurt losing to that Xanada squad. What do you think went wrong in that series? Do you think they're just more practiced? You know, they've obviously been landing for like years at this point.
I didn't go back and watch that series specifically to see like what went wrong during some of those games.
But that's going to be number 47 secured. The sword. Oh! The dice isn't getting nothing.
But I think as a whole, it's like going against them, refining over these years. They've elevated the game in a lot of different ways. They've mastered certain things, and so I think with time, would have loved to see like what we could have done if we can get to our best versus like their best or the other squad's best.
Big win for Doherty. 49-46 here. Where's the next kill come? The beatdown's there. One kill secured, and that's going to do it as Canada will move forward and play in the grand finals here at level 50.
I'd like to be delusional and say like, I would love to see, if we were able to like fully get closer to like Prime or something like that, how good we could do. But given the short period of time we put in, I think we did great. Like as a full team, we had 8 days of practicing.
Oh wow!
We had many other days as like 3/4 of our squad, but like we're all older, we got different lives. Lunch said he wasn't turning on until Halo Worlds was done, so he was fully focused on for his team for Infinite. We all have other life commitments. Like I forget, I was gone for a week or two for work or family or something like that throughout it, and so they were practicing as 3/4 of the squad, and then times where lunch was gone, me, Side, and Roy were practicing, and so with the amount of time we had in, I felt like we just couldn't close the gap to what they created over the time.
And honestly, can we just give a round of applause for Final Instinct, for Oats Overnight, for all of our legends that came out? Because a lot of people wouldn't put their reputations on the line. They wouldn't, try and rekindle that magic again. But these guys decided to do it purely for the love of the game.
We know that Strongside was your favorite teammate, your favorite duo. Who's on the other side of that coin? Who's your favorite rival?
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, who's your least favorite teamate? Throw someone down.
Okay, that might be interesting.
Yeah. Let's skip rival for now. Who's your least favorite teammate?
That's a can of worms.
So let's see. You said favorite rival though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy you love to hate.
I think it's got to be Zyos. Like I said, I think there's he's talking back at it now is like such a formidable opponent, like so easy to respect from like the different parts we went through, but like we were clashing every single event, and it was I never wanted to lose a fight because I wanted to hear something about it. Yeah, I think he would probably be the most favorite or least favorite rival, however you want to phrase that.
Last but not least, Dave, your favorite Halo title.
Favorite Halo title? Gotta be Halo 2. I think Halo 1 would be in that running, or like it's definitely in that running, but the fact that it didn't have like online play to a playable level, like Halo 2 was finally a spot where it's like, sweet, I'm no longer geolocated to how good I can get this game. I can plug in the internet, I can play online, and I can play all hours of the night and get better. And, Halo 1 kind of had just more of these pockets. One of the reasons I think Ogres got so good is they had such good competition near them in Ohio. Like, whether they, they're probably a big reason for cultivating that and having that. Me personally, I had to drive over an hour away just to practice to get anyone reasonable play against in Halo 1 for getting like a group of 4 people or more. Sure, there was somebody nearby that Big E who was really good, but we're not just going to sit there and play one-on-ones. We want to go and play like 2's or 4's or whatever.
Who's been your favorite member of the Halo community to interview? One word, one name, one player, and we'll link it in the description. That way people can go back and watch it. Maybe.
Someone like Snipe Down back in the day, when I'd interview him, he wouldn't be afraid to be like, yeah, that person's talking shit and they should wash their face this next match because I'm just going to absolutely smash it. And it's like, okay, all right. Like, no longer we played a good match. They played a good match. They held the ball and guarded around the ball better than we did. And we're going to go back to the drawing board and reference what we should do. And we'll see you after the half. And he's like, they got a bullshit unlucky spawn. And if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have lost. And I'm like, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fun, Dave, this interview, this episode has been a tremendous amount of fun. Before we let you go for the evening, any final thoughts from you or anybody you'd like to thank?
No. This has been great. Thank you for taking me down memory lane. It's been fun trying to relive some of the old old Halo memories, relive Halo Free For All number 243, like hearing, some of the positive impacts that, Halo's brought to all our lives. And appreciate what you guys are doing.
That will do it for this episode of Tide the Leader. A final massive thank you to Walshy for joining us and sharing his incredible insights and stories throughout his storied career. For Eli the Ninja, I'm Makowski. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
That's what you get.
I used to work at Mrs. Fields Cookies, and I love cookies, so that's awesome for me. That's like, I look at your face. My first job at the mall was Mrs. Fields Cookies.
My first job was GameStop.
Really?
Oh yeah, man.
That surprised me because you don't seem to know much about video games.
That's why I got fired.